are back again for Mike's Bold of the Week. Because the position is being completely removed from the game as we speak, you probably think that fullbacks don't matter, but I'm here to tell you that that's completely false. Because today and this week's Bold of the Week is going to be fullback Lorenzo Neal. A Chargers legend, but a guy that went on a journey in his NFL career unlike any other. And shout out to Robert Peck 7003 and the Doobie-Doo for recommending Lorenzo Neal for this week. Each week, I'm joining the Chargerchat Podcast and going on a deep dive of a Chargers current player or legend. I'm going all the way back to their Pop Warner days, to the NFL, and even in their post-NFL life if they are retired. And the way I'm determining which player I cover each week is whichever player gets the most comments in the comment section below of the video. So, if you guys want to see a specific player featured in next week's episode, or should I say in 2 weeks, I'm every other week here, comment that player's name down below. Before you forget, just do it real quick. This week, like I said, we're talking about Lorenzo Neal. Neal was born in Hanford, California on December 27th, 1970. And by the time he reached high school, he became a dominant two-sport athlete. You see, Lorenzo Neal wasn't just a beastly running back, who, by the way, rushed for over 2,000 yards in high school. Keep in mind, the high school football season is 10 to 13 games if you make it all the way to the championship. So that was already impressive enough, but what this guy did as a wrestler, he was an All-American. He went 42-0 with 25 pins his senior season. That's a streak that's more impressive than The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. His career record in high school ended up being 153, 8-1. And his efforts as a wrestler on the mat, as a running back on the field, and as a student in the classroom, earned Lorenzo Neal the California State Athlete of the Year. Not only did he put his high school, Amore High School, on the map, but Lorenzo Neal also caught the attention of college scouts, specifically the college football scouts at Fresno State University. Lorenzo Neal would stay in his home state of California and end up committing and playing football at the university. And man, when you talk about fits, let's talk about Lorenzo Neal becoming a bulldog, dominating on the ground as a blocker and a runner of the football. In fact, to this day, Lorenzo Neal is top 12 in both rushing yards and rushing touchdowns in Fresno State history. And he balled out to a level that he would be drafted to the NFL. But first, let's mention that while at Fresno State, he was also a wrestler still. And he continued to compete in his second sport at an All-American level, even eventually being sent to Japan to wrestle sumo wrestlers and win. Once his time at Fresno State had come to an end, Lorenzo Neal knew that he needed to focus on one sport. Unless he was actually going to wrestle the frickin' Undertaker, there wasn't much more for Lorenzo Neal to do in the sport of wrestling. So he declared for the 1993 NFL Draft and was drafted in the 4th round by the New Orleans Saints. And as a Saint, Lorenzo Neal would immediately contribute, opening up some holes for a 1,000-yard rushing season and setting himself up so that when he left New Orleans, other teams would be interested in signing the big man. And sure enough, he eventually found his way to one of the most physical backfields in NFL history. At the time when he signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they already had Warwick Dunn and fullback/running back hybrid Mike Allstott. You never heard of Mike Allstott, just watch some of these highlights and you realize what kind of football player Mike was. And this bruiser trio combined for 2,100 rushing yards. They were unstoppable, but Lorenzo Neal knew that if he wanted to establish himself as the best fullback in the league, he needed to go somewhere else where it was a little bit less crowded. He didn't have Mike Allstott taking a bunch of reps. So he would eventually leave the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and set up a signing with the Tennessee Titans. You guys may have heard of a running back by the name of Eddie George. Well, he was in Tennessee at the time, and his legacy was just starting to grow. But when he teamed up with Lorenzo Neal, they went off. In 1999, Lorenzo Neal led block for Eddie George, and George went for a career-high 1,750 all-purpose yards, 13 touchdowns. For in the year 2000, Eddie George would break both of those personal bests, going for 1,950 all-purpose yards and 16 touchdowns. The Tennessee Titans also went 26-3 over this period of time and came just 1 yard shy of immortality. This stint in Tennessee established Lorenzo Neal as one of the, if not the best fullback in the NFL. He had now done it in New Orleans, blocked up for Warwick Dunn, and as a solo feature fullback on a team, not overshadowed by Mike Allstott anymore, led multiple elite rushing seasons. So when the Bengals needed a lead blocker for Corey Dillon, who did they call? A truck of a man named Lorenzo Neal. And Lorenzo Neal came through, leading the way for Corey Dillon to rush for 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns in the year 2001. And then in 2002, put up another 1,500 yards. and 7 touchdowns rushing. Corey Dillon would go on to greener pastures and win Super Bowls with the New England Patriots, and Lorenzo Neal would leave that tandem, form an electric duo who would go on one of the greatest runs by a fullback and running back in NFL history. By this time, Lorenzo Neal had already led 5 elite rushing seasons. He was undoubtedly the best lead blocker and fullback in football, and you were putting him in front of LaDainian Tomlinson before everyone knew that he would become one of the GOATs at the running back position. I'm starting to realize that Lorenzo Neal created a couple GOATs at the running back position. Once these two paired up, they were unstoppable. In 2003, LT had 2,300 all-purpose yards and scored a total 17 touchdowns. In 2004, another 1,700 all-purpose yards and 18 touchdowns. In 2005, 1,800 all-purpose yards, 20 touchdowns. You're starting to see the benchmark set by these two. Or in 2006, they do something that the league still has not seen happen since. LaDainian Tomlinson went for 2,300 all-purpose yards again. And this time, 31 total touchdowns. All my fantasy football players out there, just imagine if your running back scored 31 total touchdowns. No non-quarterback has scored 30 touchdowns since, and they may never do it again. And in their final season together as Lorenzo Neal aged, they put up another casual 1,900 all-purpose yards, 10 more touchdowns. We're talking almost 100 touchdowns and 10,000 yards in 5 seasons. He played 221 consecutive games for the Bolts, but wasn't ready to call it quits at age 38. He would go and sign with the Baltimore Ravens, and do you think that it was a coincidence that a really young Ray Rice, a really old Willis McGahee, and LaRon McClain still put up 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns combined? Probably not a coincidence at all, because they had Lorenzo Neal lead block. Lorenzo Neal would finish his career with 16 seasons logged in the NFL and go down as one of, if not the greatest fullback in history. Nowadays, Neal hosts podcasts and is a media personality, but don't be fooled by the suit. This guy was a bone crusher at one point. As I sign off here, don't forget, y'all, to comment which Charger you want to see featured next. If you guys want to find me and more of my content, I make videos on all 32 NFL teams, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and twice on Sundays. I'm easy to find. Just search NFLMike on any platform and you'll find me. Fullback may be a dying position in the sport, but guys like Lorenzo Neal will never be forgotten.